Committee Room 30. Sound. Committee Room 30. Sound.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to the meeting of the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee. Can I just inform members that mobile devices are permitted provided they are muted and on airplane mode. Tablets and laptops should only be used for committee business during the meetings. And our meeting will take place now in public session. Can I just advise members that we have Peter Martin, MLA, Declan Kearney, MLA, is currently joining us remotely, and we are hoping to have Kate Nicholl, who is just running a bit late at this moment in time. Okay, members? So can all members see and hear us, yes, that are online? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, thank you. So item number 1, apologies. We currently don't have any apologies received as yet.
Right, okay.
Item number 2, can I remind members that they are obliged to declare any relevant financial or other interests. If anyone has any interest to declare, they should do so at the start of the relevant agenda item, members. Okay. And just moving on now to item number 3, which is the draft minutes. And can I refer members to pages 5 to 14 of the meeting pack? Can I ask members, are they content that the draft minutes of the meeting on the 6th of November are a true reflection of proceedings? Yeah. Yes, thank you, members. Item number 4, matters arising. There are no matters arising, so we'll swiftly move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is a proposal for a regulation amending regulation 2023-1115 as regards certain obligations of operators and traders. Can I remind members that the committee was notified of this proposed regulation on the 6th of November 2025. It would simplify and remove some elements of the EU deforestation regulation, which was adopted in 2023. It would also delay the application date of some parts of the regulation, which are currently due to apply from the end of this year. The proposal is therefore expected to move through the EU legislative process quickly, and the committee will likely take a decision on whether to monitor it shortly before being notified of the published EU Act if it is adopted. Are members content to request legal advice and a departmental assessment of impact on the proposed regulation with a time frame of 3 weeks?
Through Chair. I know that the Ulster Farmers Union have expressed some interest in this, because it's quite a technical sort of piece of as well. It might be useful if we also reached out to the Ulster Farmers Union, because if we're going to be considering this in this particular period of time frame, it might be useful to give them a heads up so they could be preparing as well. Yeah. If you're content.
Content?
Yep, so that's just to let them know that the notification has been received of this. Okay.
And just through the chair, there's been some representation from the Ulster Farmers Union to me and to other people, and particularly about sort of the provisions within it. I don't think they're upset about it, but it'd just be might useful if they had an opportunity to comment on it, and that would give us a bit more opportunity to do some good due diligence on it.
Yes, well, thank you, Steve. I think members are content. We'll reach out to the Ulster Farmers Union. Okay, thank you. Are members content to move on now to the item number 6?
Just on that item number 5, I think also the NI Grain Trade Association might be worth reaching out, because they've raised concerns about some similar previous proposals.
Yep. So just to be clear for members, so the proposal that's been notified is just about simplifying and delaying some elements of the deforestation regulation. So the committee's consideration of that will only be able to look at that specific bit that has been notified, but obviously we can inform those stakeholders. Yeah. Okay.
And my apologies to the chair. The reason I've raised it, because the Farmers Union has specifically raised the deforestation piece, and I'm not over the detail yet, but I imagine there is some particular reason why they're looking at it. Okay.
Item number 6, which is the European Commission Work Programme 2026 oral briefing from RAISE. can I refer members to the relevant papers at pages 47 to 78 of the meeting pack. Just to remind members that the European Commission Work Programme for 2026 was published on the 21st of October, and the Assembly Research and Information Service was asked to identify anything within that could potentially be a new or replacement act. Just to inform members that the British Government has indicated that its explanatory memorandum on the Commission Work Programme is due to be finalised and shared with the committee shortly. Once received, this will be included in the pack for our next meeting. Okay.
So, through the chair, when they say shortly, do they mean
over the next week? We would assume.
Okay, fair enough. We'll not push it then.
And just to let the members know that obviously the research paper prepared by RAISE can be found at pages 48 of your meeting pack, and 2 research officers are going to be here today to brief the committee. So can I welcome Glenda Doherty, who is the research officer, Research and Information Services Research Officer, and Megan McDermott, who is the Research Officer for the Research and Information Services. You are very much welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Just whenever you're ready, who's going to brief the committee.
So, thank you, Chair. My name is Megan McDermott, and my colleague Glenda Doherty, along with myself, gave the committee a brief overview of the relevant aspects of Commission Work Programme 2026, which was launched on the 21st of October. So the paper we submitted in advance, which, as you said, Chair, is in members' packs, seeks to inform the committee's work by identifying those initiatives and proposals in the Commission Work Programme which might apply in Northern Ireland. This is because they are potentially either replacement EU acts, so acts replacing or amending a law listed in Windsor Framework Annex 2, and therefore might be subject to the store and break, or because they're new EU acts which might be added to Windsor Framework Annex 2 and therefore would be subject to an applicability motion. Of course, it's for the UK Government to notify the Committee of a new or replacement act that has been proposed by the European Commission, or a replacement act that's been published by the EU. However, it's the intention of the paper and our presentation today to provide the Committee with an overview of upcoming and potential EU legislation at the earliest possible stage, by highlighting which initiatives contained in the work programme are likely relevant to the Committee's work. So for context, this is the second Commission work programme under Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and we provided an update to the Committee on the last Commission work programme for 2025 in March this year. The work programme is accompanied by 5 annexes listing the Commission's legislative and non-legislative intentions for 2026, and these are split into a number of areas. So we have new initiatives, which is legislative or policy initiatives to begin their journey in 2026. There are 70 of those. We have evaluations and fitness checks that the Commission plans to conduct on existing legislation to identify ways to simplify, reduce costs and consolidate rules. There are 20 of those ones. We have 151 pending EU proposals, so that's existing proposals that are likely to progress through the legislative process in 2026. And then we have 25 initiatives that the Commission intends to withdraw and 1 regulation it intends to repeal. And our focus is on the first 3 types, so new initiatives, evaluations and pending proposals. There are no withdrawals or repeals that we consider relevant to the Committee's work. So I'm going to run through the new initiatives relevant to the Committee for about 10 minutes, and then Glenda will briefly go through the evaluations and pending proposals and what's next in terms of those initiatives progressing through the EU legislative process. So in terms of the new initiatives, the main takeaway is that, like last year, there's a very strong emphasis on simplification, something that's being consistently demanded from Member States. The new initiatives are categorised, as I said, as legislative or non-legislative, and to explain how we chose which initiatives to highlight, we identified legislative initiatives with a subject area that was perceived to be within the scope of Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework and which could result in a replacement or new EU Act. A number of non-legislative initiatives, such as strategies, were included where the area the strategy covered was considered relevant to Annex 2. So that means that while the strategy wasn't legislative itself, it had the potential to result in EU acts which could ameliorate an Annex 2 act. So, for example, the livestock strategy, which includes elements of animal welfare. An important caveat is that with the limited amount of information provided, obviously, in the Commission Work Programme on new initiatives, it is often challenging to make a definitive assessment of the likelihood of them resulting in new or replacement acts. So new information in the coming year may change our assessment. Of the 70 new initiatives listed in the work programme, we've highlighted 18 that might be relevant to the work of the committee, 16 of which are legislative, and these are listed in Appendix 1 to the paper. Of the 18 new initiatives, 7 were considered likely to result in a replacement or new act, while 11 could result in a replacement or new act, and I'll run through a very short description of each 18 new initiatives with those likely to result in a replacement or new act listed first. So to begin with, most of the relevant initiatives fall under the Commission's first priority area, which is a new plan for Europe's sustainable prosperity and competitiveness. The first of those is the Advanced Materials Act, which aims to streamline and simplify regulatory processes for advanced materials, so biomaterials used in medical implants, for example, or aluminium alloys used to manufacture more fuel-efficient vehicles. We consider that the initiative is likely to result in new replacement acts because of its potential to impact on legislation in Annex 2 under multiple subheadings, including those covering motor vehicle and medical devices. The EU announced in the work programme that it's to set up a critical raw materials centre to monitor, jointly purchase and stockpile those materials categorised as critical raw materials, and that's because they're of high economic and strategic value and are at risk of supply shortage. So things like magnesium, cobalt and silicon metal. And they play a key role in smart technologies such as phones and computers, and environmental technologies such as electric vehicles and renewable energy infrastructure. We consider the initiative likely to result in new or replacement acts because of its potential to impact on legislation in Annex 2, which already contains a EU regulation establishing a framework for ensuring a supply of critical raw materials. Then we have the second phase of the European Biotech Act, which aims to boost the sector through simplification and streamlining. Examples of biotechnology include vaccines, biofertilizers, diagnostic tools and gene therapies. And we found this likely to result in new or replacement acts because of its potential to impact existing law under multiple subheadings of Annex 2, including those covering medical devices, pesticides and biocides and GMOs. The Circular Economy Act was another one. It aims firstly to tackle e-waste, so electronic and electrical equipment, and then secondly to consider a mix of interventions to foster the single market for waste, secondary raw materials and their use in products. Again, we considered it likely to result in new or replacement acts because of its potential to impact legislation under multiple subheadings, including those covering motor vehicles and waste. And that was the same analysis for the next initiative, which was the update of new legislative framework for product rules, which is about simplifying and harmonising EU product legislation. The update of rules on market surveillance and compliance of products aims to improve the functioning of the single market by improving compliance with EU product harmonisation legislation. And again, we felt it likely to result in new or replacement EU acts as it relates to multiple subheadings, including but not limited to those covering pesticides and biocides, food and GMOs. And the EU is planning an update of its rules on standardisation, which facilitate cross-border trade both within the single market and with the rest of the world. And we considered it likely to result in new or replacement acts because of its potential to impact multiple subheadings, including, but again not limited to those covering food, fisheries and aquaculture. Goods, fisheries and aquaculture. So those are the 7 initiatives under this first policy priority that were considered likely to result in new or replacement acts, and the following 5 are ones under this policy priority area which could result in new or replacement acts. But particularly in the case of the could result, we would include the caveat that we would need more information as the initiative develops to determine whether it will be relevant to Annex 2 legislation. So the first of these is called the 28th Regime, a new legal framework for innovative companies. Mm-hmm. It aims to help companies operating within the single market to provide by providing an opt-in system of uniform rules for cross-border operations. So its purpose is to simplify rules within relevant areas of law, including insolvency, labour and tax law. And it could result in new or replacement EU acts because of its impact on the regulation of the single market, which is, of course, the primary concern of Annex 2. This was the same analysis for the European Innovation Act, which aims to simplify and streamline the existing regulatory framework within the single market to reduce the administrative burden faced by innovative companies. The Commission has two initiatives, the setting up of the Energy Efficiency Framework and an omnibus to simplify energy product legislation. Neither are yet accompanied by much detail, but both initiatives could result in new or replacement EU acts because of their potential to impact on the subheading in Annex 2 covering environment and energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. And finally, in this area, the Cloud and AI Development Act, which among other things aims to boost the EU's capacity for AI by expanding the number of data centres in Europe. This act is actually not currently relevant to Annex 2, but it could complement existing EU regulations such as the AI Act, and the committee will be aware that the EU has asked to add the AI Act to Annex 2 and that the UK government is considering whether to agree to do so. So we've highlighted it here because if the AI Act were to be added to Annex 2, there would be the potential for the Cloud and AI Development Act to have some impact on Annex 2 due to its complementary nature. Mm-hmm. Under the Commission's second policy priority area then, which is called A New Era for European Defence and Security, there was one relevant initiative, which was the Simplifying Defence and Sensitive Security Procurement Initiative. It was considered that this initiative could result in new or replacement acts because of its impact on Annex 2, which already contains a directive on the transfer of defence-related products within the community. Mm-hmm. The Commission's third policy priority area, supporting people, strengthening our societies and social model, has just one relevant initiative, which is the Construction Services Act. It aims to lower barriers to cross-border market access for construction and installation services, and it aims to boost construction of homes within the EU, and it appears at this stage to mainly focus on cross-border services rather than goods, so it's unlikely to have a direct impact on Northern Ireland. We have included it because it could have an indirect impact if it results in any amendments to legislation in Annex 2 under the subheading dealing with construction products, machinery, cableways and personal protective equipment. Mm-hmm. And then finally, there are four relevant initiatives under the Commission's fourth policy priority area, sustaining our quality of life, food security and water and nature. The first of these is the livestock strategy, including elements of animal welfare. It aims to foster competitiveness and sustainability in the EU livestock sector and agri-food chain. While it's not, it's a non-legislative initiative, it has the potential to result in future legislative initiatives that could impact on Annex 2 across multiple subheadings, including medical products, food hygiene, feed products and hygiene, animal welfare, and official controls and veterinary checks. Mm-hmm. Then we have the update of rules on unfair trading practices in the food chain. So the original act governing these rules is not contained in Windsor Framework Annex 2, so ordinarily we wouldn't flag this. However, the committee will be aware that the EU's other initiative in this area, the proposed regulation to strengthen the position of farmers in the food supply chain, does amend a number of regulations which apply here under Annex 2. That regulation has been notified to the committee, as you know, as a replacement act, and it is being monitored by RAISE at the request of the committee. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to wait and see the detail of this new initiative, but given that we know the rules governing the protection of farmers in the food supply chain are in Annex 2, it is possible that an update of the rules on unfair trading practices between farmers and businesses could also have some Annex 2 impacts.
Okay.
And then finally, the EU's Vision 2040 for Fisheries and Aquaculture and the Ocean Act are two initiatives that we considered could impact on Annex 2 on the subheading covering fisheries and aquaculture, and in particular in the case of the Ocean Act on regulations governing the conservation of fisheries resources and the protection of marine ecosystems. But we would need further detail on both for a more definitive analysis. And I'll finish before I hand over to Glenda by saying that as part of our monitoring role to support the committee, we will of course be keeping all of these initiatives under review as they progress. So I'll hand over to Glenda, who'll take you through the evaluation checks and pending proposals relevant to the work of the committee. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Megan. So Megan covered the new initiative, and I'm going to talk a wee bit about the pending proposals and the evaluations of current EU law, and then address some next steps. I'll be very quick about this. Annex 3 contains 151 pending proposals which are likely to move through the legislative process in 2026. And just to note, some of these proposals were in the 2025 work programme and will continue to move through the process in 2026. For the purposes of the committee, an act was identified as a relevant replacement or new EU act if it referenced amending or replacing an act listed in Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework, or it was referenced as a Windsor Framework Act in the EU's online documentation on Eurlex, or the EU or UK explanatory memoranda identified it as a new or replacement Windsor Framework Act. Of these proposals, we identified 27 that are potential replacement or new EU acts that could be notified to the committee. And this list is in Appendix 3 of our briefing paper, which is page 69 of your pack. 16 of these proposals had also previously been identified by the Executive Office as a new or replacement act, and each of these were associated with the UK explanatory memoranda. There was also an additional 11 potential new or replacement acts that were identified within these pending proposals, having met one or more of our criteria. For example, there were 4 potential new acts in pending proposals that referenced Windsor Framework in the EU's online documentation, including the European Union Designs Regulation, the EU Oceans Pact Regulation, the Critical Medicines Act, and a regulation on the Supplementary Certificate for Plant Protection Products. So that's pending proposals. In relation to evaluations, there were 20 acts that will be undergoing evaluation and fitness checks, as Megan explained, of which about half, 10, are in Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework. And these are listed in Appendix 2 of the briefing paper, which is page 68 of your pack. And these evaluations check if an act is effective, fit for purpose, and provides added value, and it may inform the future revision of EU law in these areas. So to conclude, in all, 55 proposals, evaluations and initiatives were identified that could potentially result in a new or replacement act in 2026 or future years. And just to note, as Megan was saying, our analysis is not definitive. Initiatives may have been identified that subsequently do not result in a replacement act. For example, in 2025, 2 acts in the work programme had references to the Windsor Framework in their EU online documentation, and these tags were later removed. Conversely, other initiatives not identified may be subsequently notified by the UK government. However, regular tracking and monitoring should identify upcoming new and replacement acts. And just to note that all pending proposals listed in the 2026 work programme relevant to the work of committee had previously been identified by RAISE and are currently being tracked. So, in relation to the next steps, the EU institutions will produce a joint declaration on the EU's legislative priorities, which will outline those proposals to be given priority treatment. And this is scheduled for approval by the General Affairs Council on the 16th of December. We will continue to monitor and track new and replacement EU acts relevant to the work of the committee from the earliest possible stage to ensure that any potential new acts are picked up. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Glenda. Thank you, Megan, both for your paper and your presentation this morning. I'm going to open to members if they have any questions.
Yep, just a couple. Thank you very much indeed for the presentation. It was very useful. I noticed sort of the EPP and some of the further right groups within the European Parliament are pushing to disrupt quite a few of these regulations coming through because they want to see a greater simplification within the sort of the EU and the EU Commission. Is there any indication that any of these initiatives are being slowed down or not coming to the fore within the timescales they set in 26, or are they being any indication they've been pushed back? Or have you not seen that from the European Journal or anything?
At present, it's not really within the scope of the paper, but at present I don't really see anything being pushed back, and I think it's just something that we'll have to watch as the initiatives start to go through the legislative process. we do provide monitoring updates in relation to a number of proposals, and if there are any issues, we can raise them in that update.
I'd say it's probably too early in terms of this commission work programme. You do see ones that were already pending, like
I've seen some of the previous ones are getting pushed back and are not getting through the committees, and I'm just thinking, where's that going to lead to? The next one is rules on standardisation. That seems to have grown a bit, hasn't it? It seems to be within its scope.
I couldn't.
It might be just something to keep. Look at what the previous sort of was and what they're looking in 26. Because the rules of standardisation seems to. I mean, I'm just saying it because a couple of companies have come to me and said, actually, the rules of standardisation, they're covering areas that weren't covered before. So I just wanted to know if you're doing your monitoring, could you just keep an eye on that, and maybe flag that up. And the one I think is creating a lot of concern is this cloud and AI and where that's going to, and particularly where the EU wants it in part of as Annex 2, but the UK, as far as I understand at the moment, have basically said no. So there's going to be just keep an eye on that as well. But thanks very much indeed. I mean, there's 101 questions I have, but I mean we can sit here until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not going to make any more difference. But it's just particularly in just keeping an eye on some of the changes, and it's the expansion in the regulations is the interesting bit. Because what previously, and I had a look at sort of the rules and standardisation, and I just saw that it had expanded out in sort of particular areas, and there's sort of a degree of concerns about that. But thank you very much indeed for your president, and keep doing your good work. That's good. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Any questions? We have no further.
Peter.
Peter. Yep.
Yeah, apologies, I don't know what that is on my screen. I'm very seldom on Zoom. It could have been a heart there, for all I know, and that would have been a disaster. Yeah, it's maybe not so much a question necessarily for the folks from Raise, but I just wanted to pull up something on their conclusions or next steps. It's on page 62, just for colleagues. I'll just read it out, and then it's maybe more for the committee to consider. I maybe should know the answer to it, but I don't. It just states Lord Murphy's recent review of the Windsor Framework and the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee's inquiry on strengthening Northern Ireland's voice in the context of the Windsor Framework have both recognised the crucial importance of early engagement. No formal mechanism currently exists for exchange of information between the Commission and the Northern Ireland Assembly on the Windsor Framework. However, both reviews have both provided recommendations regarding how this might be achieved in the future. I'm just wondering, maybe not so much for the Raise researchers, but maybe an update for me. In terms of those recommendations, has committee sort of engaged, or what level have we had in terms of engagement on those recommendations, if any?
He's spoken to us.
Yeah, so next week the informal session is scheduled, and that will largely be devoted to considering those recommendations and the committee's response. So we'll go into the detail then.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Just one final question from myself, and obviously just in relation to the process that you undertake to be able to do such a substantial work and the scale of it, and it was an excellent report and well laid out and quite clear, but it's a substantial. I would just love to, just for my own information, maybe for members as well, just the journey that you take to be able to do the tracking and the recording of potential legislation and stuff, so the resources that you use, and maybe as a team, do you encounter any difficulties?
Well, at the moment, we have a solid process in place to monitor EU law, and it draws on all the publicly available EU resources. We use Eurlex. We would also look in Concilium as well to see what the Council are doing, particularly in relation to particular decisions around new acts, and the Working Party on the UK as well. But now, Eurlex itself includes a tag or a reference when a proposal is considered relevant to the Windsor Framework. This is not always done accurately or done at all, but our monitoring system essentially takes this into account. and usually picks up potentially relevant proposals anyway.
Yeah.
We do have our own version of the protocol, which we would use to see whether something's a replacement act or not. And we would use that quite a lot, and we'd update it in order to ensure that we are picking up all the replacement acts that are coming through. Is there anything?
I'd say we have a pretty kind of broad way of monitoring so that we catch everything just in case, so that we can be working ahead of what the committee might need. So it's slightly different maybe from the list that TO would have. But I think given the resources we have at the moment and the amount that's coming through, we're happy that we can continue to do that. If there was a very big increase in the amount of legislation coming through that we were asked to monitor, we might need to rethink that, but for the moment we're okay.
No, and that's reflective of the substantial report that you have laid out. Thank you for that, Steve.
Do you get much opportunity to tic-tac with the Northern Ireland office in Brussels and with your research and sort of going back and forth and saying this is what we're seeing, is that what you're seeing?
Not really, no.
Maybe that's something, Chair, we might look at, because you're doing a lot of really good work, they're doing a lot of really good work, but it might be a good opportunity if you were able to, at your research phase every quarter, to be able to sort of tic-tac, this is what we're seeing, is this the same thing that you're seeing? Because, quite frankly, the TEO doesn't have a lot of knowledge of what's going on, and sort of neither do we, so you're the ones who are keeping us on the track.
Well, thank you very much, Megan and Glenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask members, are they content for the research paper to be shared with both the Executive Office and the British Cabinet Office?
Yes, and can we also share it with the Northern Ireland
Affairs? Yeah.
And also our bureau in Brussels.
Are members content? Yeah.
Yep. Good piece of work. Well done.
ONIB and the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you want to share it with the House of Lords Scrutiny
Yes,
Committee as well?
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe we should just have a catch-all of Westminster Committee's general press send.
Can I ask members, are they content to publish the research paper on the committee's webpage?
Yes, happy.
Okay, thank you. We'll just move on now to item number 7, correspondence. And can I refer members to item 7.1, and that's at pages 80 to 86, and it's correspondence from the Committee for the Economy following its oral evidence session with Lord Murphy and the Road Haulage Association last week. The Economy Committee has shared a copy of its correspondence with the Secretary of State and a written submission from the Road Haulage Association. The Economy Committee also forwarded transcripts of both sessions, which members will have received by email. Are members content to note?
Just through the Chair, I think it's very important that some of the points that have been put out from the Road Haulage Association, and where it says things like unlawful product movements, unsustainable backlogs of declaration, very concerning. It just indicates how difficult the Windsor framework is proving to be, particularly for our haulage industry and our logistics industry.
Great.
Members? Moving on now to item 7.2, and that's at page 87, and it's a status update from RAISE on a proposed regulation on the welfare of dogs and cats and their traceability, which the committee is monitoring. Are members content to note? Yeah. Okay, thank you, members. Items 7.3 to 7.7 are all copies of correspondence between the House of Lords, NI Scrutiny Committee and the British Government. Item 7.3 at page 91 is from the Lords Committee to the British Government regarding a proposed regulation and proposed directive on digitalisation and common specifications. The committee is monitoring both proposals. Item 7.4, it's at pages 95, is from the Lords Committee to the British Government regarding 2 proposed Council directives on excise duty for tobacco and tobacco-related products. Item 7, yes,
Come in on that one. I don't know if you've been noticing the media, but I think there are 2 European countries, I think Slovakia is one of them, and there's another one, have raised objections under the Windsor framework about sort of tobacco and vapes, who basically are challenging the United Kingdom's view of moving towards age-related use on phasing out of tobacco products. Just wonder if it might be useful if we could do some correspondence to find out a bit more about that, because I think that's important.
So So because that's not an issue that relates to an amending or replacement EU Act, it wouldn't be within this committee's remit. But you could write to the Committee on Health, because I know they were considering that bill and the LCM. So
it might be worth sort of. It's just that it's because it's come up, and there was, I think it was, I can't remember whether it was somebody from the House of Lords wrote to me separately or something like that. I need to check. But basically, it was saying that under the Windsor framework, which we are the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee, that the issue was being raised by 2 European countries about tobacco products and vaping. So, so maybe it's not a replacement act, or it's an act that's already in place, but you know, it's part of the Windsor framework, and somebody else has complained about it.
In the first instance, will we flag it with the Department of Health and flag what information?
And so that would be very useful if we flag it with the
the
Department of Health.
The Committee of Health,
Yeah.
Just in the first instance, sure, and see what comes back.
And just reference that proposal for Council Directive 205/580 and 205/25/581, and that would be that's the things that they.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Item 7.5, and it's a page 97, and it's a response from the British Government to the Lords Committee regarding veterinary medicines and the Windsor framework. Yes, David?
Yeah, Chair, just from a political point of view, to comment on the Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee session around this this week. I think it is concerning to read the, I think it was Baroness Ritchie, who said that her private discussions with members of the government give her the understanding that the British government's approach was to do nothing to see what happened with 40% of our veterinary medicines likely to be prevented access to Northern Ireland by this, to do nothing to see what sort of chaos ensues and then decide if any action is required. I think if that bears true, it's a despicable way in which to handle these affairs. It wouldn't be something that would be tolerated across any other part of the United Kingdom, and I think the British government needs to reflect on that if there's truth in that. I think Baroness O'Loan also said that she felt that it was being used as a negotiating tool in wider EU UK discussions around access. That's the Northern Ireland economy, and certainly the health of Northern Irish-based animals should not be used in that way. So I think that I'm very concerned about the impression that's been given, and I would suggest that the government needs to do something to put that right.
Yeah, and may I, Chair, through the Chair, the tone of the correspondence we have there, it seems as if they're saying that we've got a scheme, but actually it doesn't address the 40% issue, and it also doesn't mention the precursor chemicals, which is another significant issue as well, because some veterinary medicines are made up here, and there's issues to do with that as well. And indeed, I understand from the various vets associations that the rest of it, they're very concerned about what's happening. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, bearing in mind it's all supposed to come in place in sort of 52 days' time or something like that. I think that is concerning.
It sets a worrying precedent if this is the way in which the government seeks to go forward, is that instead of trying to prevent harms being done to aspects of the Northern Ireland economy or supply chains, that it's going to wait and see what happens, and wait to see if there is significant and lasting impact, because as we know by then, a lot of the decisions will already be made, and you'll be trying to get the EU after the fact to agree to some kind of mitigation. I just don't think that's the way forward at all, and I think the government needs to reflect on the way it's handling things.
Can I make a proposal, Chair? Because the letter's already been corresponded to Andrew as the Minister of Agriculture. Could we write as a committee to ask whether the Department of Agriculture here has any concerns about this? Because maybe they don't have any concerns at all, but it might be useful to write to them and say, this is correspondence come through and several members have raised the issue in the committee, just to look at that, and maybe copy it to Robbie in the committee for the Agriculture Committee.
Yes, I think.
And it's only 50 days away, so I mean, if they've got, if it's ringing alarm bells with them, they should be able to come back and say, yeah, we've got concerns. But if it's not, it's there.
Yeah. Members content? Yeah.
Just on that, would it not be more appropriate for us to direct that similarly to the Agriculture Committee, given that it's not a new or amending act. I mean, I'm just conscious that we're not stepping on the toes of other statutory committees who may already be undertaking work on this, and then if they want to share ministerial responses with us, that's fine, but I'm just conscious of the boundaries of this committee's work.
And the Agriculture Committee has been copied into that correspondence, so they will be aware of the issues. I think they might be getting some further briefings on it in the next while.
I think the way in which this issue is handled has an impact upon the wider work of the committee and the way things are handled by the British government going forward. So I don't think I understand there's attempts, and I have supported them in the past, to try and keep the committee's remit, tight to what we're supposed to be focusing on. But to go along Steve's road a little bit, I don't think we should be completely incurious around these things, because they're going to have an impact upon what our work is. So the way in which the UK government handle this issue will set precedent for how it handles things in future, and I think it's worth asking our own department, our own minister, has he had any interaction? Does he have concerns around it? It doesn't mean we'll be doing the scrutiny and bringing witnesses in to talk about the wider issue, but I don't think it's unreasonable to write a letter and ask for a response.
Happy enough for a letter to go if that's the view of the committee. Chair, I'm just conscious that this is an issue which has arisen directly out of the Windsor framework, and our job isn't to scrutinise the framework as a whole, but a very narrow area within it. But given the significance, I mean, I wouldn't force a division on it if members are minded to direct to the minister.
I'm conscious, obviously, we have a clear role in statute of what this committee is, and we don't want to be duplicating the role of other committees, given the concerns that you have raised, and given obviously the 50 days of where it is. On this occasion, I think I would be content if everyone else... sorry, I'll let Declan in before I finish. Yes, Declan?
Yes, Ciara, I would agree with that approach, but I think what we should do is write into the record of the committee the caveat that we are also mindful of the remit and the scope of this committee, that it is very particular and specific, and that while we're issuing the correspondence, it's not in breach of the restrictions that are placed upon us, and equally the restrictions, but the responsibility to maximise scrutiny.
Thank you, Declan. Is that fine?
Yeah, happy.
Yeah.
I just think, Chair, in terms of my own view on this, that I have no problem with that, but I don't think we're not proposing here holding a committee inquiry into something that's not within our remit. I think actually getting some of this information, bringing things to light, is actually helpful to all of the Assembly. I mean, whatever people's opinions, and I don't mean this as a challenge to anyone actually, but I mean, in terms of us all, I think whatever people's opinions on Brexit, Windsor framework, all of that, I think we would all share concerns if we were having significant amounts of veterinary medicines blocked from Northern Ireland. I accept that actually the Agriculture Committee can do more thorough work on that, but I think it doesn't hurt to have this committee also function in terms of when we're reviewing correspondence, which relate to wider matters, being a canary in the mine sometimes to flag these things up, and therefore sometimes to get a bit further information. But I'm not proposing we do significant or huge amounts of work on this, just that actually we can sometimes get a bit more information that can be helpful to other people as well, in the same way that the Lords sometimes provide us with things that help inform our view of the wider issues that we're considering.
David, yes.
Just to come back on that very briefly, Chair, and that's why I have no objection to bringing it to the attention of the Agriculture Committee, and as I said, given the significance of this particular issue, happy on this occasion to be flexible, because I am concerned, and there is mutual concern. But what I'm really conscious of is, I mean, we all have our own perspectives on Brexit and the Windsor framework, and I could come to this committee every week and ask that we write letters and have inquiries into the damage that Brexit has caused and things that weren't included in the Windsor framework and how it's subpar to where we were before. But I just don't think that's in anybody's interest. So I think if we all respect the confines of the committee, it will give rise to a better working relationship and make our work much more productive than it otherwise would be.
Okay, thank you, members. So it's obviously just for members to be mindful of what our statutory remit is within the committee, and likewise being respectful of the role other committees have to play. but obviously on this occasion, given the concerns raised, I think the proposal would content that we write both to the Minister and the committee to raise the concerns raised and to see what their thoughts and views are on it. Yes?
Yes, and is the committee content to include the caveat that was mentioned by Declan there about the remit, but really
Yes.
that it's seeking more information from the department about this the issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, members. So we'll move to item 7.6, and it's at page 104, and it's from the Lords Committee to the British Government regarding a regulation on a gradual rollout of etomid. And then item 7.7, and that's at page 108, and it's from the Lords Committee to the British Government regarding a delegated regulation on the entry requirements for certain dairy products, food additives, collagen, casings and meat products. Are members content to note items 7.6 and 7.7?
Yeah, happy to know.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Moving on now to item number 8, chairperson's business. I don't have any chairperson's business, so moving on now to item number 9. Do members have any other business? No? Okay, members, so we'll just move on to item number 10, which is the date, time and place of our next meeting. The next meeting, members, as we've previously discussed, will be an informal meeting which will take place on Thursday, the 20th November at 10 a.m. in room 106 in Parliament Buildings, where we will consider our response to the Lord Murphy's review of the Windsor Framework. Yes, David?
No,
Oh, sorry,
no,
I thought
no.
you were. So if members content, I will now adjourn the meeting. So thank you, members.
Committee Room 30, sound. 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 Committee Room 30. 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 Committee Room 30, Sound. 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 Committee Room 30. 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 Sound. Committee Room 30, 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 sound.